All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We are beginning lesson six of the End Times Harvest message. And today's message is an interesting message because we're going to go through the book of Revelation in about an hour and 15 minutes or so. And I did get a lot of this message from Mike Dickel from IHOP. Actually, I got it from a friend who got it from IHOP. So, but she updated some of it, and I updated quite a bit of it myself. So, but we will get in. We will go through Revelation and at least an overview of Revelation, and after this, you will understand quite a bit of Revelation. It makes understanding Revelation that much easier, especially if you take the symbols that we talked about yesterday and apply it into the book of Revelation. It will make much more sense. There's a few things that I wanted to go back to regarding our topic that we talked about yesterday, the different symbols. Last night, Samuel from Malaysia, a brother in the Lord, he sent me a video regarding the harlot of Babylon, and it has some compelling cases, and I know there's some people that have talked about that. So this individual believed that the harlot of Babylon applies to the Vatican, and there's some compelling cases about that. And what I said yesterday would be a city in Europe, because Europe contains, it was founded and named after Europa, per se. So it's very possible that it is the Vatican City. It could be. There's some compelling cases there, but it would be a city in Europe. So that's something that we need to look into. Another point that I wanted to point out, if somebody were to go through the whole end time message with you, it's going to be very difficult for any one person to get everything 100% correct, because the prophetic message about the end times has been sealed for so long. And even Daniel, when God was sharing it with Daniel, Daniel had a hard time understanding the completeness of it. So I think even today, it'll be very difficult for any one person to understand it fully at this time. So you may not be able to understand it fully, even though sometimes people explain it to you as if they understand it fully. Now, I don't understand it fully, but like I said yesterday, to the best of my knowledge, I will try to share with you. Another point that I wanted to point out is that you do not need to understand all of the prophecies about the end times completely in order to understand the gist of what Revelation or the end time message is all about. Let me explain. It's like we don't have to understand the whole Bible to be a Christian and to live out our lives as a Christian. The reason I'm pointing this out is because sometimes we get bogged down we get stuck and we say, wait, I read this and I don't understand this part about the end times. So I don't understand this about Revelation. And then you get stuck there and you keep trying, you spent hours and days and months trying to understand a certain symbol or a certain topic. And you spent so much time and it is so confusing. And then you forget the gist of what Revelation is about, or the gist about what the Word of God is about. And we get bogged down by different things. And I don't want any of us to get so bogged down that we don't understand the gist of what the book is about and what the end time is about. And it causes us a waste of precious resources of our time of trying to figure out everything. So you don't need to try to understand everything, and you don't need to try to understand every single detail or every single prophecy or every single symbol. Some of these will not be revealed until we actually go through it ourselves, because, for example, the seventh seal, those seals will be revealed in order, and we'll talk about those seven seals and we'll understand them. But in some cases, these things were not made to be understood by all of us at this time because we don't have knowledge of the future. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So please don't get so bogged down and you get so tied up that you don't understand the message itself. So that's my point. We can understand the message of the last days and the message of the Bible and the gospel without fully understanding 100% who God is and what the Bible is teaching us. But we can grow in the knowledge of the gospel and we can grow in the knowledge of God, and that's our goal. All right, so with that, then let's get into our lesson for today. Revelation is extremely unique book. It's a very special book because it's the only book in the Bible that comes with a promise of a blessing and a curse. So if you read Revelation, it actually says this: anyone who reads it, anyone who hears it will be blessed. Now, I say this over and over and over again. When I see it in the Word of God, I believe it. So if the Bible tells me I'm going to be blessed reading it, what does that mean? That means that Christians should be reading or listening, to the stories in the book of Revelation. But so many Christians, if you ask them which book they don't like to read or they don't read, they will say Revelation. Why would that be? It's a book that brings blessing if we read or we hear it, and yet so many Christians don't read it or don't listen to it because some said we're afraid of it or we don't understand it. But that's not what it's meant to be. But it also said in the book of Revelation that anyone who adds to it or who takes from it, we will be cursed. So we don't want to modify it. We don't want to try to make things up and, add to the book of Revelation. So as a teacher, if we teach the book of Revelation, we need to do our very best to not try to add or take away from it. It is meant for everyone to understand. If God said we will be blessed if we read it, then it is meant for us to understand. So it should not be too hard for us. But in the past, it has been so hard. But because now we're in that season of the last days, it should be much easier for us to understand, especially if you understand what it's all about. If you understand the outline. A lot of students in college or in high school it starts as sometimes when they have to read a book, they don't understand the book. So sometimes even after they read the book, they still don't understand it. So they have what they call cliff notes. So cliff notes are like an outline of the book and they point out major details of the book. So when people begin to read the cliff notes first and then they read the book, they say, this makes so much sense. So today I'm going to provide you some cliff notes that will help you understand the book of Revelation that much easier, especially when you combine it, with the symbols that we talked about yesterday. So here's the key thing about Revelation. Actually, the book of Revelation is the story of Moses given to us in advance. If you think about the story of Moses, hearing the cries and the prayers of his people, God commissioned Moses to bring judgment upon Pharaoh and then to lead his people into the promised land. But do keep this in mind. When Moses brought judgment, when Moses brought the plagues upon Pharaoh, Pharaoh was not such a nice king. He said, bad things are happening to me and my land, and I'm going to just let the people go. What did Pharaoh do? Pharaoh said, whoa, things are tough for me. You are trying to play game with me, Moses? You're playing chicken with me? There's an expression, playing chicken, in the US. I don't know if you know this, but for example, you can have two cars driving, but they're driving towards one another. And both of them are heading towards one another, and they want to see which of the driver will be afraid and they'll chicken out. And what that phrase means is that when they see a person coming to them, who is going to back off, who is going to divert to the other lane, who's going to be so scared. So anyway, when Moses brought judgment upon Pharaoh, Pharaoh was saying, okay, you're playing game with me, I'm gonna make tough for you. So he started uh, making it difficult, more challenging for the Israelites to make bricks. So instead of the Egyptian giving them the same amount of straws, they give them less straws, and eventually they have to find their own straws. And if they don't meet the quota, then they will punish them even more. So in the story of Exodus, God commissioned Moses to bring judgment upon Pharaoh, and Pharaoh didn't like it, so he made things more challenging for the Israelites, for the Jews. However, eventually God led through Moses his people, the Jews, the Israelites, into the promised land. And the Bible even said that there is not one among them who was weak. So it tells us that the Israelite grew stronger and stronger and stronger in the midst of the trial as eventually they are led to the promised land. So similarly, this is what's happening to our world. Wickedness will increase, the Bible say that, and it is going to grow so much that the cries and the prayers of God's people will reach God's ear, and God will commission his son Jesus to release judgment upon the Antichrist empire. And then the same thing, the Antichrist will bring judgment upon the people. He'll bring persecution upon the people of God. And then, but at the same time, the goal of God is for Jesus to usher us, his people, into the new promised land, the new heaven on earth, the new Jerusalem. This is the exact same story that you will see in the book of Revelation. It is that easy, it is that clear. So as we go through the book of Revelation, you will notice the similarities between Exodus and the last day Exodus into the promised land. So this is what Revelation is about. This is the main theme of the tribulation, is the judgment upon the Antichrist empire. But there is a secondary theme. The secondary theme is the persecution and tribulation against the church from the Antichrist. Just like what I just said, Pharaoh putting pressure on the Israelite after the plagues were released. Think about this with me. I want you to understand this. I want you to follow me. In the beginning, when it all started, when Moses came into Israel and he noticed all of these things that were going on, and he saw all the slavery that was taking place, and he saw the suffering of the people, and he came to the people and he said, God called me and I'm here to rescue you. But the people were very excited. Yeah, oh yes, we're going to be rescued, from the dictator Pharaoh. Everybody's so excited. Our God is so good. How great is our God? Like the song that we sing on Sunday, how our God is so great. So we're so excited about how great God is. However, after the first plague, well, wow, everybody was amazed. And then after the second plague, whoa, everybody was amazed. The only thing was they were amazed, but they didn't like it. They started grumbling and complaining. Why? Because of the pressure that Pharaoh put on them. Things actually got more challenging for them. So this is the secondary theme, the persecution. So the church will go through the tribulation as well. And it's the same story here. So we will get a lot of pressure from the Antichrist, after Jesus released the judgment upon them. But the wonderful news about all of this is that the church will grow in power. The church will grow in strength. So if you look at Psalm 105, verse 37, this is what happened. So I quoted this, but I want to show you the verse where it came from. He brought his people out of Egypt with silver and with gold, and there was no one who was weak among their generation. Whoa, how amazing is that? No one was weak, not a single one person, because they grew strong. So Daniel 12:10 tells us the same thing. Many will be purified. So Daniel 12, we already established that Daniel 12 talk about the last day. And it said that many will be purified. They will be made spotless and be refined through this trial. So the same thing that's happened, because we are being refined, we are being strengthened. Why? Because we will be the radiant bride that Jesus is waiting for. So God has a great purpose for us, the church, and it's to take us into the promised land, but it's for us to be strong, to be purified, to be cleansed, to be blameless, because he's preparing us to be that bride, and we are going to bring a great harvest with us. But for us to understand the book of Revelation, we have to break it out into different components or different parts. So there are four main parts of Revelation, and it's broken out by these different chapters. So the chapter 1 of Revelation, basically it's the commission of that John was given a commission to reveal Jesus' majesty and prophecy about the end times. So think with me for a second. This is in comparison to the story of Moses. It was when God met Moses up on the mountain and there was a burning bush. God was commissioning Moses, and Moses, I have a plan and a purpose for you. And it's for you to lead my people into the promised land. So it's that commission. So Jesus was commissioned in Revelation 1. And then the second part, Jesus wanted to prepare his church to be overcomers. So he wrote these letters to the 7 churches of that time that represent the end time churches. And these are your weak points, these are your strengths. And I applaud your strength, but these are your weak. Grow in these areas, overcome. I want you to overcome. I want you to be strong. I want you to be radiant. So that's Revelation 2 and 3. And then the third part, Revelation 4 and 5, it's when the scrolls were given to Jesus. He takes them, and God said, now you're commissioned. Go, cleanse the earth. Go, bring judgment upon Satan's empire, because we are going to replace that. And it's going to be a new promised land, and eventually the new heaven on earth. And lastly, the fourth part of Revelation is God's judgment against the Antichrist world empire, along with the transition to the promised land, the new heaven on earth. So this is how the chapters are divided. So if you begin to understand, the overall picture of what Revelation looked like, some of you listening to this, we've only been at it for, a few minutes, 10 minutes or so, and you're like, oh, I am beginning to understand Revelation already. You're already starting to understand Revelation. It's not that hard. So let's go through each part with a little bit more detail. So this is part 1. We said it was John's commission. John was commissioned to reveal Jesus' majesty. Think about this. When God started talking to Moses, Moses, asked God, who should I say who sent me? And God said, I am. I am who I am. So God was already teaching Moses, reveal the I am, reveal who I am to the people. In the same way, Revelation reveals who Jesus is. By the way, the book was called Revelation. It's not about revelation of the last days. It was the revelation of who Jesus Christ is. So it reveals his heart, it reveals his power, it reveals his majesty and his glory. And if you read, it's Revelation 1 where Jesus, I am the Alpha and the Omega. So there are 18 characteristics about Jesus just in Revelation 1 alone. Alpha, Omega, that's 2 of the 18. So we get to know who Jesus Christ is. Isn't that what the Bible is all about anyway? Who is our God? How exciting is that? So it's the secondary portion of the book, it's really about the events of the end time. So when we think about Revelation, most of us think, it's about the end times. But it's actually about revealing who Jesus Christ is. And then secondary, it reveals the events of the end time. So what should this do? It should cause us, it causes us to love Jesus more and to respect him more. As we see these dramatic plans for the last days unfold, before us. The same thing that happened in regard to God when Moses came and revealed God to the Israelite. At first, everybody was so excited. Whoa, our God heard our cries. He is such an amazing God. But who is this God? After the first plague, they started to ask, who is this God? After the second plague, who is this God? The third plague, who is this God that's giving us so much problem? And they started to doubt. But remember what happened at the end when it came to the 8th plague and the 9th plague and finally the 10th plague. The people started revering God, and they said, oh, whatever God said is true. They want us to put blood of the lamb, blood over our posts. We are going to do it. Not only did all the Jews did it, but there were other people who were Gentiles. They were doing the same thing. That God was so revealed in his character and his nature was so much revealed among the people that even outside of Egypt, when the Egyptians were walking around in the desert for 40 years, people all around the area, people from the Philistines, they heard about how amazing and how powerful that God was, because everybody at that time heard about the power and the amazing and the great awesomeness of the God of the Israelites that took out the entire Pharaoh army and people and the Egyptian. It was so amazing, and people honor and revere God the Father back then. The same thing will happen here. Now, the second part, Jesus gives us the picture of what he wants the church to be, because he's preparing the church to be overcomers. This is so exciting. If you are going to read Revelation, please focus on Revelation 1 and Revelation 2 and Revelation 3, because it's giving us a blueprint, a roadmap of how you and I can be overcomers. So it's exhortation and encouragement. Jesus spoke prophetically to the first century churches. He called them to be overcomer. He identified the issues that will most challenge the end time church. And then his prophetic messages are intended to give us instruction on how to best prepare for his coming. And Jesus promised us eternal rewards. So I had thought this through, and I was thinking, well, I was going to list out for you, the 7 churches and the weaknesses and the strength and what we need to do to grow in those areas. So I was going to do that, but then I decided not to do that, but instead give you an assignment at the end that you should do that. And there's a good reason why. The reason is the Bible said, if we read it, if we hear it, we will be blessed. So instead of me just pointing all of it out to you, you will have an assignment at the very end. It's for you to read Revelation 1, 2, and 3, and then focus on looking and studying Revelation 2 and 3, and what are the areas that are weak and the areas that are strong, and then how do you strengthen the weak area, and then apply it in your life. So the reason I'm going to give you an assignment is because the Bible promised that you will be blessed, and I want that blessing to flow to you. So we will do that at the very end. So you will have an assignment this week, today. Then the third part, so we're going through each part in a little bit more detail, and we'll spend a lot of time focusing on part 4. But part 3 said, Jesus is commissioned by the Father to use that power to cleanse the earth and replace this government and to drive Satan off the earth. So he is going to, clear this land out. He's taking like Moses. Moses took the staff from God and he started walking towards Egypt. So Jesus has taken the scroll here in Revelation 4 and 5, and he is going to do his part. So the scroll that Jesus took, he took 7 sealed scrolls from the Father. They represent like the title deed of the earth and the action plan that's going to happen. And these are the events that will take place as he brings judgment to cleanse and prepare this nation for Jesus to rule. And this is when the church will really start to grow, because as there's an expression, things will start to heat up. I meant that, spiritually, but also literally, physically, things will start to heat up because things will be burning. It will be true. You will see it in the 7th seal. And so there's going to be a maturity and a unity, and the church will grow even more so because we will have to take a stand like no other time in history. You will see this. Now, finally, the 4th part, it's Jesus' battle plan. This is the meat and potato. That's where all the actions will take place. So the focus on the tribulation of God's wrath or his judgment on the Antichrist world empire will last for 3.5 years. Actually, it will be 3.5 years plus 1 month, plus an extra 30 days. And by the way, when we talk about years here, in the book of Revelation, in the Bible, 1 year, it's not 365 days because they're not using the Gregorian calendar. Oh, talking about days. Kay and I are celebrating a special day today, 311. 311-day anniversary. So we're very excited, a very special day. Never before have we celebrated 311 days. Only one time can we do that. So we're very excited about that. God has blessed me with an amazing wife. But anyway, so the years that God will use will be 360 days, the Jewish calendar. So that's why when you see the numbers 1260 for 3.5 years, it doesn't add up if you count 365 days in a year. So Jesus will give us a very clear picture of how he will prepare the nation for this transition. So we will look at all of that. There's the time of the Great Tribulation. The last 3.5 years will be an amazing time, amazing period for those who respond, because they will experience the greatest revival in history, like no other time in world history. If we are Christian and we really love Jesus, this should excite us to see people come to know, to hear and see people coming to know Jesus. Sometimes in churches, when we share about salvation and people coming to know Jesus, some Christian and some churches, someone came to know Jesus, and we go, oh, okay, someone come to know Jesus. But come on, you look in the Bible. When someone comes to know Jesus, even the angels rejoice. The angels are having a party. You're like, yeah, hallelujah. How amazing. This is so great. In sports stadium all over the world, when their favorite team score a goal, when they score some point, when they score a run, when they score something, when they make a good play, the whole team, the whole fan base erupted. It's like, wow! And that's only just to see a ball go through a net of some sort. Come on, we're talking about lives. We're talking about lives that entered the net of God, that being rescued from hell, from the fire of hell, into the net and the safety and the peace and the heaven, all of the good things, the kingdom of God. Shouldn't we all get so excited about what God has in store for us? shouldn't we all be like, oh, this is amazing? Now, we're not talking about one or two people coming to know Jesus during this time. We're talking about countless multitudes, so many people from every tribe, every nation that no one can count. This is going to be the greatest time ever, the greatest harvest ever in the history of mankind. You know, if you're a fisherman and you go fishing, you want to talk about the day. It's like me, I want to talk about the day that when I caught the biggest fish, or I want to talk about the day when I caught the most fish. Like when my son and I went fishing one night, we caught 200 fish in one night, 200 fish. You know, Jesus, people get excited. Jesus and his disciples, they caught 153 fish. We caught over 200 fish in one night. We were, yeah, oh my, this is amazing. However, it will be a very terrible time, a very terrible day, a very terrible period of time for those who are rebellious, those who don't respond, because they will experience extremely severe judgment of God in history. So the majority of the storyline of Revelation will focus on the Great Tribulation and God's judgment poured out on the Antichrist world empire. So we will see the seven seal, the seven trumpets, and the seven bowls, and these are actual events, and they will increase in intensity, and they will be listed in order. The Antichrist reign of terror is a part of this. And guys, I know when you read this thing, and if you try to go and find maps and figures about the seven seals and the seven trumpets and the seven bowls, I am telling you from a timeline perspective, it is placed, it is all over the place. People are asking questions right now. When does the seventh seal start? Some people are saying we're already in the seventh seal. We're in seal 4 right now. Not true. This doesn't happen until Jesus takes the seal and he begins to bring the ultimate judgment. And what happened? We just lost. Do you still see it on your screen? Okay. So I clicked on too many buttons. Let me bring us back to where we were at. Boy, my fingers were so excited hearing about the great harvest. It just moved so quickly. It did it again. What happened? The same thing happened, that something happened to my PowerPoint of some sort. That is very strange. Let me see if we can fix this. Oh, I see why. Ah, ha, ha. No. Mm-hmm. 162 to 190. Okay. I figure it out. So it was not my fingers, it was actually in the setup. So I changed for us to start at a new session today, but I forgot to change when we were ending, which slide we were ending. So if we understand the timeline, when I was talking about the seven seal, the seven trumpets, and seven bowls, if you do research on the internet, the timelines are all over the place. But it's because they don't understand. If you read through this book of Revelation, it tells us when all these timelines will take place, and it's pretty clear. So let's review the timeline. And the chart that you've seen, and now I've added the seven seal, the seven trumpets, and the seven bowls. And let me explain. Let's go through this timeline and with more details. And so, like I said, I'm going to help you understand the 7 years and explain to you what it looks like, and then what are the things that God is expecting. So let's start back at year 0. At this moment, nobody knows when this is going to take place. Everybody is looking forward to a peace treaty between Israel and the rest of the world. We know it's going to start sometimes. We don't know when yet, and I'll give you more information on that tomorrow. That's when I believe it's going to happen. But something is going to happen, and then they will build the temple. The Jews will build the temple. Here's the question that I have for you. Why don't they just build the temple right now? You know, why can't they build the temple right now? Some of you have been to Israel. Maybe some of you have visited where the temple is, the land where it is, and you will give me an answer. The reason that they can't build the temple now is because the Muslim have a dome, have a mosque there, the Dome of the RAK. And if the Jews try to build the temple there at this time, guess what's going to happen? World War III. Because the Muslim believe it's their holy land, the Jews believe it's the holy land. So there's a fight going on, but you know, in some of the treaties that were made back in the older days when Israel became a nation and when they won some of the wars that they fought, you know, they gave that area for the Muslim to kind of oversee. So if they try to take over at this time, building the temple will not be a good thing because it will start a war not with only Israel, but with the rest of the world. So, and I mean that, you know, for some of you who don't understand the Middle East and Israel, oh, no, 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 it is that bad. It will get the whole world involved. So information about Israel and the Middle East are very, very significant. But something is going to happen, and I will explain that tomorrow. Something is going to happen that will allow the Jews to build the temple, and they will be functioning under this peace treaty. So the first 3.5 years, actually, there will be some challenges during those 3.5 years. But I will explain to you what those challenges are. However, there will be some peace. There will be a false sense of peace. That's why when you read in the Bible, like in, is it 1 Thessalonians or 2 Thessalonians 2 or 1 Thessalonians 5, one of those two passages. I think it's 2 Thessalonians 2. In one of those two passages, you know, where people say peace, 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 but then destruction will come upon them. So the 3.5 years, it's peace, 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 but it's going to be false peace and then destruction at the midway point. The midway point, it's when the Antichrist, you know, like I said, there's going to be a movement of the 10 world government in the 10 world kingdom, the 10 world kingdom. There will be a new world order, and eventually it will get to a point where the Antichrist, he comes, he's been on the scene since the beginning of the 7th year. He reveals himself in the kingdoms. The new world order will begin to be established in the strongest sense, and they build to it, and the 10 kingdoms come. 3 of the kingdoms, you know, will be subdued by the Antichrist, and he takes over all 10 kingdoms. He goes into the temple, and finally, you know, the Antichrist, taken over by Satan, finally, he will rule 10 kingdoms at the midway point. And he is thinking, I am God. I am the God of the world. I rule the whole earth. There's never been an empire. There's never been a ruler that has ruled the entire earth in history. There are some rulers that rule major portions of the earth, major territories, but never the whole earth. So Satan will rule the whole earth. Now, of course, you have some rogue nations like Israel. Israel's not going to come under the one world government. The U.S. will not as well. A portion of the U.S. will not as well. But you have the man of lawlessness. He gets so excited. He said, I am the God of the world. Nobody can beat me. He gets so excited. He finally goes into the temple and he said, I am God. Boom, 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 boom. That's when God said, enough is enough. You know, God always say that throughout history. The Tower of Babel, the people were building the tower and they said, oh, we are going to be like God. The tower is going to reach to the sky and we'll be God. Once you get to the point, God always said, enough is enough. And that will be the point. God saying enough is enough. And he releases the 7 seals. So the 7 seals will start immediately after the Antichrist. And that's why you see the first seal, the Antichrist will begin. He will very quickly begin a conquest. He is going to start conquering and killing the Jews and the Christian. That's why the Jews will run into the wilderness. That's why the Christian will need to start hiding, you know, because that time will begin. You know, wars will begin and famines and pestilence. You know, these 7 seals will begin to take place. So I'm giving you an overview of the 7th seal. Eventually, the last seal, this, you know, the 4th seal, incredible things happen. 1/4 of the earth being destroyed and all these things. So incredible things began to happen. And then at the 7th seal ushers in the 7 trumpet judgment. So these are the difficult times, you know, the Antichrist going against us. It's just like in Exodus stories, you know, the Egyptians, the Pharaoh brought the Israelites into captivity and difficult things happened for them. And then they cried out to God. And when they cried out to God, judgment poured forth. The 7 trumpets were the judgment against the Antichrist and his world. So you see that the 7 trumpets, so the 6 trumpets were the judgment, and then the 7th trumpet, the last trumpet, that's where the church is raptured. At the very end, 1260 days, remember our 30-day Jewish calendar is 3.5 years. It's equal to, sometimes the Bible uses 1260, sometimes the Bible uses times and half a times, 3.5 years. So it means the same thing. So this trumpet will go for 7 years, and at the 7th trumpet, the church will be raptured. So sometimes in the Bible, you hear the 7th trumpet or the last trumpet, you know, the church will be raptured. That's what this means, the 7th or the last trumpet. And so at the end of the 7th year, the church will be gone, and God brings forth finally the bowls of wrath, 30 days, the final 30 days where there will be wrath against the ungodly while after the church. So this is an extra 30 days. That's why you see sometimes 1290 days, you know, for the extra 30 days. And there are other dates, that 1335 as well. But this is the first 1290 days. Okay, so now let's look at the 7 seals. After the midway point, keep the timeline in your mind, and that will help you understand what's going on. This makes Revelation so much easier to understand and so much clearer. Look at the 7 seals. Jesus took the seals. You know, he's the Lamb of God. And they use the horses that are represented. So the first one is the white horse, and it said, you know, the Antichrist will initiate his conquest. And immediately the 2nd seal was open, and there's going to be bloodshed and war. He's going to go after the Jews and after other nations, the US as well, where there's a lot of Christians. So he's actually not focusing on individual nations except for Israel, but he's going to be focusing on the Jews and the Christian. Bloodshed and world war. With bloodshed and world war, guess what you're going to have? There's going to be famine and economic crisis. The coronavirus, it's not even a war, it's a pestilence, and we have an economic crisis. But the seal economic crisis, it's going to be so much worse. So much worse. It's going to be much worse than World War II. Because the fourth seal, there will be pestilence, there will be diseases. And according to the Bible, all of these things will begin to add up. The war, the famine, and the pestilences, and 1/4 of the earth will be affected. Death. They will die. 2 billion people. Okay. So, you are all looking every day. Well, I don't know if all of us are looking, but a number of people are looking every day at the death count from this virus. Sometimes for your country, sometimes for the whole world. And I don't know what the number is at this moment because I haven't been keeping up with it this last week. But so the numbers continues to rise. I don't know. I have no idea how many thousands of people have already died. 80,000, 100,000 or so. Even the estimate, if the whole world, 1 million people die from this virus. 1 million is a lot of people. But when you compare to 2 billion on seal 4, it's actually a very small number. 1 million is an extremely small number. So what's going to come will be so much worse. So much worse. That's why, saints, if you are struggling right now with this virus, I am telling you, it's going to get a lot worse in the future. And if you are having a hard time dealing with it right now, it is going to get much harder. So God is giving us an opportunity to grow stronger in Him at this time. We can get rid of the fear. We can get rid of our hurts. We can get rid of our worries. We can get rid of whatever negative things that's in our heart so that we begin to live the life that He has for us. So this is what it is talking about. The fifth seal, this is when things get so bad, the people, the cries and the prayers of the saints, there's going to be like a prayer movement. People will be crying out. And this is when you will see martyrs, a lot of martyrs. People start getting killed. It is starting here. Christians, Jews coming to know the Lord, and people are being martyred because the church will stand strong in the midst of it. I do want you to understand something. For most of us in the Western world, we don't understand this very much. For us who live in America, for example, we don't understand this very much at all. We don't like suffering. I mean, who really likes suffering? It would be much better if we don't have to suffer, if we don't have to go through trials. But all throughout history, when the church is persecuted, read it all in the Bible, read the book of Acts, and then you look through history, the church in China back in the late 60s and early in the 70s, major persecution. You look at the church in the Middle East when there's persecution. The church does not get weaker. The church gets stronger. Do you know why? Because when there's persecution, that tells us that the ruler is a dictator, and they're using fear, the scheme of the enemy, fear to control. So Everybody's afraid in one form or another. But when they begin to see, wow, I can't believe this person actually is stand up for their faith, other people will take notice. So instead of people running away, more and more people will come to know Jesus. And the church grows stronger and stronger and stronger. Last night, there was a question that was asked. One person asked a question. Um, the question was, do you think that God would spare America so that America doesn't have to suffer? I said, no. Number one, it's not in the Bible. Number two, why do we want that? If we know the Bible said that these trials are going to make us stronger and we'll be refined, we'll be purified so that we will be ready for Jesus, why do we want to take this privilege away? Why do we want to be a church that is so much weaker? Why do we want to be a bride that it's going to be weak and not ready for Jesus? You know, Matthew 25 talk about the 10 virgins. And 5 virgins are ready, the other 5 were not. They were not strong, they were not prepared. Why do we want to be the 5 virgins that are going to be left out? No, 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 no. We shouldn't have this kind of attitude. We want to be strong, we want to be ready, we want to be radiant. No, it is going to come. The question is, are we going to be ready? 6, there's going to be a crisis in heaven. The sky will even roll up. I don't know, it sounds a little bit like some nuclear activities there as well. There's some cosmic disturbances in the heavenlies as you read it, but it sounds like there can be some nuclear activities as well, because there will be so much fear that will grip the whole world. And it's interesting that when you read the end of chapter 6 and in the beginning of chapter 7, there were 4 angels and they were talking. And it says here that the winds have to come to a complete standstill, that there's no wind at all, or the earth will be destroyed. It's very interesting, you know, that the land, the sea, all of these things will be destroyed. So that's why it sounds to me like there will be some nuclear activities here too. Why? Because I don't know if you guys remember when there was a nuclear reactor in Fukushima in Japan. Fukushima, right? In Japan. I was talking to my sidekick here, my beautiful bride. And so Fukushima, when the nuclear reactor happened and the reaction happened, and people in California, you know, all the way across the Pacific Ocean were so fearful of the radiation that would move over, you know, with the wind from Japan to America. So some of the stores, certain items were all bought out because, you know, they thought that would help them from some of the radiation. And people were even fearing to eat the fish from the sea because of all of that. So we know that the wind can cause destruction with radiation. So very interesting. So if you read that, you know, it's like, whoa, this may be possible based on just what we're seeing here. But at that time, the pressure is so much. Then there's an angel that we begin to ask questions and start asking questions. Who's going to be able to stand in the midst of all of this? Who can stand in the midst of all of this pressure? This is going to be so bad. Who can stand? And then John sees a divine sealing on the 144,000 Jewish believers who will stand in victory, and they will be powerful testimony. And then you will see a great harvest of multitude of believers. It says here, from every nation, every tribe, every tongue will come to know the Lord. You know, Matthew 24:14 tells us this, that there's going to be every nation, every tribe, every tongue will come to know Jesus. We will see it in this period of time, that the Christian will stand so strong in the midst of persecution, in the midst of suffering. We will be so strong that we're not even afraid of death. Wow, incredible. How is it even possible? Incredible. This is what we are going to see. In Revelation, the saints, we will not receive God's judgment, so we don't need to fear that we will compromise under the pressure of persecution. Now, for those people who are fearful, then they will, what did it say in Matthew 24? That we will even, what's the word? I'm losing the word. That we will waver, we will fall away. There will be some who will fall away in the earlier days, but those who stand in will get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and we won't waver. So look, be hot or cold, the Bible said in Revelation 2 or Revelation 3, when one of the churches, be hot or cold, Jesus said. So if you are going to waver now, get out now. It's going to get tougher. But otherwise, don't stay in the middle. Don't be lukewarm. Let's get hot for Jesus. Let's do it now. Don't wait for that. Finally, the seventh seal. There's going to be silence for half an hour. And the people will begin to cry out again. You notice that in the book of Revelation, the church cries out so often. It makes sense. During the coronavirus, people are starting to cry out. When it gets more challenging, people and more people will begin to cry out. So you're going to have an hour, half an hour of silence. It's like the whole world, just like, everything shuts down. So you think it's quiet now in your city. So New York City, in certain places, very quiet, even during the middle of the day. But this is the whole world's going to get quiet. This is how bad it's going to be. The whole world will be quiet for half an hour, followed by prayers. People will then begin to cry out, and they cry out to God. And judgment of the seventh trumpet against the Antichrist will be released, and it begins to come. Look, let me show you. These are the seven seals, and it's going to happen after the midway point. So if you go through all of these things again, it makes sense. The Antichrist, after the 3.5 years of false peace, because the peace treaty is supposed to last for 7 years. So this Antichrist that had a part in dealing and helping, to establish his peace treaties, he's going to break it because we don't trust the Antichrist spirit, the spirit of Satan. You can't trust him because he doesn't hold on to his word. He's not the truth. He's the father of all lies. So how can you trust him? He's only established these things for his own advantage so that he can become the king of the world. So there it is. So at the midway point, he claims to be God, and he said, enough is enough. He has the 10th kingdom by that time. He'll have the 10th kingdom, already in place. And he said, that's it. I am going to start my conquest of the world. And he said, I'm going to get rid of the Jews. He's got the 10 kingdoms, but he has Jews and he has Christians that are against them. He said, I got to wipe them out. If I'm going to rule the world, I want to rule the people who will worship me. Because, we saw yesterday that he wants to force people to worship him. And even in his attempt to force people to worship him, some will not. The church will not be forced to worship him because we want to worship the one and only true God. Jesus is his name. So he is upset. So he initiates all these conquests, and he starts the war. And it's a war against Christian and against the Jews. And with the war, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be great famine and economic crisis. And then more pestilence will come. A fourth of the world will die during this time. That's why you read in Matthew 24 and Daniel 12 and many other places. It's the greatest anguish of all time in the world. And we're just starting with the seal. The judgment, the trumpets will make it even worse. And that's why you see prayers and cries from the strength, and martyrs will begin to take place. We're not talking about a few martyrs here and there, but a lot of martyrs from every nation will begin to happen. And then it gets worse. The sixth seal, major crisis, a multitude, even more martyrs from all nation, and possible some nuclear things going on here as well. And then the seventh seal that ushers in the seventh trumpet. That's what these seven seals look like. It makes sense to me. It's very clear. So you see so many timelines that have seals, some people believe we're already in the seventh, seal number 4. They said, oh, the coronavirus is seal number 4. No, 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 no. Please don't just accept everything that you see in the internet. No, 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 not at all. This is what it looks like. Let's look at the seventh trumpet. Okay, talk a little bit about the trumpet judgment. These judgments are judgment against the Antichrist empire. Think about the 10 plagues of Moses' time. They were against Egypt and Pharaoh. They're supernatural acts of God, and they're going to destroy Antichrist resources. They also will show that the Antichrist power. He does have power, but the power that he has, it's inferior to the power that God has, that Jesus has, and it's similar to the time of Pharaoh, similar to Elijah and the prophet of Baal. God has all the power. Satan has some power, but it is less than. So we need to understand that. So the seven seals, the seven trumpets, starting with Revelation 8, it says 1/3 of the earth and 1/3 of the trees and all green grass will burn up. Oh, in America, we have a lot of green grass. Our homes have a lot of green grass. This is not good news. All of those things will be burned up. The second trumpet, 1/3 of the sea will turn to blood. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea will die. 1/3 of the ship in the sea will be destroyed. That's what it says in Revelation 8, if you read that. Things are getting worse and worse here, guys. The third trumpet, 1/3 of the earth, fresh water will turn bitter. There'll be poison. People who drink it will be poisoned. And of course, the fish will die there as well. 1/3 of the earth light, trumpet 4, will be darkened. 1/3. Sometimes we get a big storm and there's an outage, a blackout that could impact a neighborhood, or it could impact part of a city. But we're talking about impacting 1/3 of the earth. This is not good. And, you can't just turn the electricity. It's not like you wait, a few hours or a day or so for the electricity to come back on. It is not going to happen. Trumpet number 5, there'll be locusts that will torment those not sealed by God for 5 months. Look, it's very specifically in the torments are scorpion-like. I've never been stung by a scorpion. I live in Texas. In Texas, we have deserts, and in deserts, there are scorpions. So I remember one time I went to Mexico on a missions trip, and we were sleeping on the floor, and somebody said, look, there's a scorpion running around. So we saw a scorpion in Mexico. There are scorpions in Texas, in the desert, in certain places. And they will sting. These locusts will sting, and they will hurt. They will be tormented. It said it would be so bad, people who want to die, they can't even die. That's what it says if you read Revelation 9, 1 through 12. But we will see God protecting his people. He will be sealing his people, not only the 144,000 Jews here, he's going to seal his people like it was in the time of Moses when God did not destroy and did not destroy his people. God protected his people. The same thing will happen here as well. God is going to provide for his people. And then trumpet number 6, 200 million horsemen that will kill 1/3 of the earth. It is going to be bad. First, you have 1/4 of the Earth's population. So, that gets us from 8 billion to 6 billion, and the numbers will begin to dwindle. 1/3 of that. When people are having problem with the food, from our vegetation, and then the food from the sea, and then there's no light, and then they get tormented, and then 1/3 of the earth will be killed. And also want you to notice a lot of these judgments are very similar to the plagues, the 10 plagues that Moses brought. Do you see the similarity between Revelation and the book of Exodus? Because the book of Exodus and the story about Moses was given to us in advance so we can understand the book of Revelation. It is very clear. So the plagues are very similar. So the earth being destroyed, you have the locust, you have the darkness, you have the fresh water, you have the sea that turned to blood. And then you have the firstborn being killed. Very similar. Very, very, very similar to Exodus. That's why if you read Revelation and you understand Exodus, this is what it is all about. So I haven't talked about the 7th trumpet, but the 7th trumpet ushers in the returns of Christ. It's the last trumpet. So now you look at our timeline again, but this time we're not focusing on the 7th seal. The 7th seal ushers in the judgment, the 7th trumpet. Now all of these things will begin to make sense. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Each trumpet's judgment, it just gets worse, 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 worse. But we see God's protection, it gets worse, 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 until the 7th and last trumpet. That's why when you read in the Bible, it said at the sound of the last trumpet, at the 7th trumpet, all of these things, it gets worse, 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 but it changes. And then there's a crescendo. Think about what happened in the 10 plagues. Yes, it got worse, 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 worse. Yes, it did 10 times. And then the Israelites started reverencing in awe of God. When Moses shared something to them, what God said, everybody went, whoa, even the non-believers, even the non-Jews, they were like amazed. Some of the non-Jews even, when they heard that if we take the lamb and the blood of the lamb and post it over our door, we will be saved. Non-Jews started doing that because they began to be so much in awe of God. And they're so excited because they know what God said is going to come true. This is what's going to happen. So it goes from fear, 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 fear to, oh no, this is our God. He is so amazing. And he's coming back. He's coming back. He's coming back. He is coming back soon. Boom. With the loud trumpet, it comes. And if you look at all those passages that we look at about the rapture in Matthew 24, 1 Corinthians 15, 52, in Thessalonian, in 2 Thessalonians 2, it all talks about that. We've looked at it in our previous lesson. Boom, all at the end, right there. All right here, it's gonna happen. So the church will be gone. And then the 7th bowl of wrath for those who are remaining on earth. Oh my goodness, it's already gotten so much worse. But then there's also the seven bowls of wrath. My goodness, this is exhausting. You know, if you are going through all of this, it is just incredible. So we talked about all of this momentum being built up with the seals and the trumpets being released. So the angel in Revelation 10 through 11 begin to explain all of these things. Things will become clearer because secrets and things that have been concealed will no longer be concealed. They will be revealed through the church. During that time, the sixth trumpet time, they'll raise two witnesses. You know, these two witnesses, these two prophets are quite amazing. I mean, they have so much power. If you read about them in Revelation 10 and 11, I think Revelation 11, they'll help God's people, and God's people will see them. And you see the manifestation of power. I mean, fires coming from their mouth, and the Antichrist army keeps trying to kill them, but they won't die. They just couldn't die. It's just incredible. I mean, a lot of people are watching these superhero movies nowadays. They're making them. It's like, you know, you shoot at them, you throw fire at them, and they just don't die. Well, these are going to be two superheroes. They just will not die. God's superhero. They won't die until the appointed time. Then they will die. Okay, it's interesting. But God has a timing for it, and they will eventually die, but God will use them, you know, to be witnesses, you know, of the power of God. So the Antichrist will operate his worldwide worship system called the abomination of desolation for 1,290 days. So it's the 1260 plus that 30 days for the seven bowls. The saints will prophesy, will be taken care of, be provided for, will be persecuted, and a number of them will be martyred for 1,262 days. Okay. So this is what we're talking about. That's why you see 1260, 1290s, the numbers. 1,260, 3.5 years. Whereas the Antichrist will operate his abomination of desolation worship system for 1,290, because there will be 30 days of the seven bowls of wrath here. So this is what it means. So this, you know, I am a simple person. Sometimes when I read, I go, I don't know what they're talking about. But if I can see it in a picture, it makes so much sense for me. So I'm putting it in a picture for you to understand it. This should be a lot clearer than what has been taught and what you have known before. It's not that hard. You know, I don't understand everything in Revelation at this moment. I mean, nobody does at this time anyway, but it's beginning to make more and more sense now. And then after that, there will be the second coming procession, and it begins. The rapture, the seventh trumpet, the rapture of the church. I already talked about this. All the saints will know, and that's when the cry of "Come, Lord Jesus, come." Now, the Bible does teach us this, that when Jesus comes back, he's going to come back in 3 stages. He'll come back in stage 1, you know, across the earth, in the sky, to rapture the saints. Then he'll come the second time across the land, and finally, he enters into Jerusalem, in using the seven bowl of wrath to destroy the Antichrist army that gather around Jerusalem, and he began to replace all of the evil governments on earth. So during the 7 trumpets, very interesting, you'll notice that the kingdom, the empire of the earth, will begin to come under Jesus' leadership, but the nations will still be angry because a number of them don't believe in Jesus, of course. The unrighteous will be judged, and they'll be spent 1,000 years in Hades, and eventually, you know, the Antichrist, the false prophet, will be thrown into the lake of fire. The saints will be rewarded, and the rebellious still on earth will be destroyed by the 7 bowls of wrath. Oh my goodness. The 7 bowls of wrath are the third and final number series of judgment that will destroy the evil infrastructures in society, the Antichrist empire. And these bowls will happen in 30-day period as Jesus marches through Jordan to fight that final battle, Armageddon campaign in Jerusalem, and to rescue the unsaved remnant of Israel. Very interesting. Israel finally, get to come home, per se. So the 7 bowls, okay. Guys, oh my goodness, even just me reading it is exhausting. Imagine going through this. It is just going to be incredible. Bowl 1, painful sores on those who worship the Antichrist. Bowl 2, destroying the sea with blood and killing all in it. Bowl 3, more fresh water will be filled with blood. Bowl 4, heat and fire from the sun. Bowl 5, darkness, complete darkness now. Not just 1/3 of the earth, but complete darkness. Bowl 6, the nations will be deceived to go against Christ and remaining Jewish people in Armageddon. I want you to understand all of these judgments, most of these judgments, again, very similar to the plagues. And the same thing happened with Pharaoh. They were deceived to go to the Red Sea. And when they went to the Red Sea, the whole Pharaoh, Egypt, and the Egyptian army, Pharaoh and the Egyptian army were completely wiped out. They were deceived. Do you see the similarities between the story in Exodus and Revelation? It's the same, folks. But in the Red Sea, Pharaoh and his army tried to cross the Red Sea, and they were destroyed when the sea just came back and just killed all of them. By the way, it's so interesting. I forget what year it is, but there was some time ago, people began to discover remnants of chariots, including the wheels and the carts and all of these things in the Red Sea. And they found a lot of chariots in the Red Sea. Oh God, it's real. But in this case though, when they were deceived to go to this Armageddon, they will be destroyed by earthquake and hail. So it's not the Red Sea, it's going to be Armageddon. So instead of water, it'll be earthquake and hail. Same thing. Eventually, when we get to Revelation 19, whoa, marriage, when I talk about the marriage supper of the Lamb, first of all, when I talk about marriage, I get excited. Woo-hoo-hoo, 311 days, amazing. Boom, 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 so exciting. But how much more exciting when we talk about the wedding supper of the Lamb, the marriage supper of the Lamb. We will be united with our groom, and we will be the church, and we will be radiant. Jesus has been waiting for the church. It is coming. Yeah, so exciting. The saints will be rewarded with governments and choices during that 1,000-year reign. So anyway, and then we see Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem as the king to end the Armageddon campaign. He destroys the army of the Antichrist. Jesus will sit on the throne as the king of all kings. And then he'll cast the Antichrist and the false prophet into the lake of fire, and will cast Satan into prison and establish the millennium. So this is what we see in the book of Revelation. It is, if you focus on the fear and the tribulation, you have missed it. God has a greater plan for us. He has a greater purpose for us. This is an exciting time that God is going to be releasing for us. Now, I know and I understand some of you may be struggling. Some of you might have fear. Some of you are still worried. And maybe we're not there yet. I get it. Maybe we're not quite there yet. It's okay. But if you want to get there, please contact us. Contact us and we will help you get rid of the fear. I'm going to give you actually my personal email. It's squan@rakministry.com. So that is my personal email. So actually, Kay, can you just put that in the chat? That's squan@ministry.com. So Kay is going to send that to you. So because we really want to see you walk in the kingdom and grow in the kingdom. I'm not going to be able to help everybody, but I have people in different places that I will refer you to, and we will help you be able to get rid of some of these negative emotions in your life so that you can start walking in the kingdom. But I do have an assignment for you. And the assignment is this. I want you to read through, I put Revelation 2 and 3, but I want you to start with Revelation 1. Read Revelation 1 because I want you to start focusing on Jesus a little bit here. So you focus on Jesus in Revelation 1, and then when you read Revelation 2 and 3, I want you to identify the areas where the churches are strong and the churches are weak. And you can use a spreadsheet or something. You said they're strong here, his church 1, they're strong here, they're weak here, his church 2, strong here, weak here. And then you compare it to yourself. Don't try to compare. Don't try to use this for your spouse or for other people. No, this is for you, for yourself. Where are you? And then look at it and say, how can I grow? See, I was going to do that for you, but I decided not to do it because I want you to read. Because the Bible tells us if we read and if we hear, the Revelation, this book, we will be blessed. I want you to be so blessed if you understand this. And you can use, if you want to read Revelation more, you can use this PowerPoint as a study guide. So maybe in the future, I can put a worksheet or something and an outline or something that will summarize some of these things for you. And I'll think about that and I will try to do that in the future and we'll post it out there. But for now, if you can download, Anna had asked yesterday if we can download the PowerPoint. Yes, if you just go to rakministry.com, online training, stage 2 is where we have the teaching on the end time. And there's the PowerPoint has been moved to the top of the page. And when you go there and you click on it, it automatically downloads it to your laptop or whatever it is that you're using. So you can use that. If you want to read all of Revelation, look at the 4 parts. Look at the symbol teaching. So lesson 5 is the symbol. Lesson 6 is the overview of Revelation. So when you look at those and when you begin to read through Revelation, understand it from the Cliff Notes perspective, you will understand the book of Revelation so much better. It will begin to make sense in a way that you never thought possible. But you need, and don't get stuck on, like if you read a certain thing and you say, I don't understand this certain thing. I don't understand this symbol. I don't understand this beast. I don't understand, this thing. It's okay. Don't get stuck with it. If you get stuck, you're not going to make progress. They tell people when they're taking tests for the college exam, sometimes they go to a question and they get stuck. And some people are not good test takers. So they spend 30 minutes, working on this one question, and then they could never finish it. And so their score is so much lower. Don't get stuck. Just keep going. Eventually, later, maybe if you read it a second or a third or a fourth time, You'll have more understanding. So now I'm going to stop the sharing. Whew. Wow. That was Revelation in a nutshell. Something that you might not have heard before. So let me pull up the chat because we have 11 chat messages. Let me see. I'll look through this first and see the question. So in the meantime, you've been thinking about your question, and we'll see where we go. And then I'll open the mic and you can ask question. Okay, let's see. Okay, so some of you were responding to Finland's message about, yeah, that was incredible. Jaakko, thank you for sending that. Boy, that was such an encouragement to see that in Finland, someone was raised from the dead from this virus. That was just incredible. That's good news for us. You know, for those of us looking for numbers, numbers infected, numbers who died, to see a negative number is very exciting. All right, Miss Sylvia asked, in the Great Tribulation, assume that the non-believers at the time already have the mark of the beast. Would they be safe when Christian evangelized to them? Will some non-believers resist bowing down to worship the Antichrist if they already have the mark of the beast? They can't be saved, right? Oh, wow. That is such a great question. Ooh, my goodness. I think the answer to it is that you are right. But I'm not 100% sure here. So I'm gonna have to look at this a little bit deeper. So let me look in the Word of God and see if there's a confirmation in terms of whether that's 100% true. I think that is my belief. I think that is right. Okay, but it's a good question. Okay, another question. If God's two powerful witnesses appear after the sixth trumpet is blown, say they witness for 1260 days, it seems after 1260 days, it brings the date beyond the end of the 7 years when the church is. Could you explain the timeline? Will the post-tribulation indicate the beginning of seventh trumpet, first trumpet? Okay, I will need to look at that. So you have two good questions, and I don't think they're going to witness for 1260 days. So let me look into that a little bit. And so this kind of question, I would need to look at the Word of God more. So, okay, I will get back to you on that tomorrow. Okay, so good question. Okay, do we have, let me see, I'm going to open up the mic here. Do we have any other questions that you might have?
Simeon?
Yes.
So my question's just with the rebuilding the temple, and you know that's in a Jewish prophetic view as well as the Christian church, right? But is it just an assumed point since the temple's been destroyed as the Antichrist has to enter the temple? Or do you see that specifically in Scripture anywhere, rebuilding the temple?
Oh, yes, the temple will be rebuilt, Ezekiel 40. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. We'll look at it tomorrow. Ezekiel 38, 39, it's the Gog-Magog war. And then we see Ezekiel 40, temple being rebuilt. So, good question, Michael. Any other?
But you know, that's when Ezekiel was written, I mean, they were looking to the first temple that was destroyed, and then being, you know, you've had multiple times the temple has been rebuilt and then destroyed, the last time in 70 AD.
Good point, but the Ezekiel 38, 39 hasn't happened. So we'll discuss that more tomorrow. Okay, so that's a good topic for tomorrow. We'll look into that tomorrow.
Thanks.
By the way, I think we will complete training tomorrow. So I need to work on the training. I've been teaching on the last day, so I have notes from the past from the last days. But for those of you who had listened to it in the past and you listen to it now, there's been a number of changes. And mainly the changes have been I'm bringing current events and I'm making more charts and bringing it to a level that it's so much easier for us to understand. So that's the differences that you've noticed. Okay. All right. Any other questions? There's a lot of information, for us to take in. And my desire is to bring things to a level where it makes sense. The Bible should make sense. We all should be able to read it and understand it. So it should not be a mystery. The last day's message, we know it's a mystery because it was a secret. It was kept as a secret, but it's no longer a secret because we're in the end time season. So it should begin to make more and more sense. The reason, I started sharing this message about the last days, and I started this a few years back, and I began to understand it more. I used to preach it at my church when I was pastoring a local church. I had preached it for 8 months, every Sunday, one time for 6 months straight. I took a break and then for 2 more months. And so when I started preaching and teaching this to the rest of the world, I took all of that and condensed it to a one-day teaching. So recently, just a couple of weeks ago, Miss Cho from Houston here, she asked if I can do these mini teaching, an hour or two each day for a group of people. And that's when I took the message and I started updating it. And the Lord gave me more understandings, and I started breaking this thing out and doing the chart and everything. And as a matter of fact, even as I was going through it this first time with you, I noticed that I could make some more changes to certain charts that will make it easier for you to understand. So I'll be making update, and I'll share some of the update tonight because, if the Lord gives me certain things, or as I see certain things, I make this update. So we're posting it out, and it's in rakministry.com stage 2 there as well. So rakministry.com online training under stage 2. So you should have the PowerPoint up to yesterday, maybe not yesterday's teaching yet, because I don't think that's been posted yet, but that should be posted today. Okay. Any other question? By the way, because this is the first time that I've done online teaching, a few people have asked me, if I could do other online teaching. So if there's an interest in that, I may do other online teaching, but it won't be 4 days a week, maybe 2 times a week or 3 times a week or something like that, but we'll see. And it could be part of the RAK ministry teaching as well. So I'll have to consider that and pray about that. But the ultimate goal of RAK ministry is to release the kingdom in each and every one of us so we can live it out, and then we can advance it. That's why you have the 3 stages: to release it, advance, live it, and then advance it. So that's what we're looking at, that possibility. And the kingdom is defined with righteousness, peace, joy, love, and power. If you and I can be released into that, we have more righteousness in our life. We have more peace, more joy, more love, and more power in our lives. And by the way, all that is in the Bible. And if we can have more of that in our lives, and then we can live it out for ourselves and our spouse and our family, then we can use it to advance the world, because what we don't have, it's very difficult to pass on. But if we are living it, it's very easy to give it away. Okay, so that's the main intention of all of that. Okay, any other question? You're welcome to share the video with people. You're welcome to listen to it again online. And, you know, I'm gonna think about ways. Pastor David Tripp shared with me yesterday that he think there are ways to get the message out, that people can host, you know, view parties and discussion and things like that, because, you know, it would be good to get the message out. A few of you already told me this, that you want, some people are watching it online, some people are watching it with the leadership, you know, together and things like that. So it's the message is going to spread. The teaching of the last days, what you have heard so far in all 6 lessons have been very different from, you know, other messages that you have heard in the past, and a lot of which is very practical as well. And if you really look into it, it's really about what the Word of God says and the strengthening of the church, so that we can do greater things with Jesus, you know, as we prepare to be his bride. Well, I don't see any more questions, so I want to thank you so much, guys. Blessings. I believe we have one more tomorrow, and if God gives me any more after that for an 8th session, we'll do it. If not, then Wednesday will be our last. So so far, I think tomorrow will be last, you know, unless we can't finish it tomorrow. So blessings to everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Have a blessed
You as well. Thank you.
evening.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Oh, Cecile had asked about
Thank you, Pastor.
downloading the video. I don't know if you can download the video. Samuel, I'm not sure if you can download it. And the PowerPoint you can download. But I don't, the video is just there for you to view. Are you saying that you can't view the video? But if you can't view the video, that's a different story. People have been able to view it, but I don't know if we added the capability for you to download the video. But Miss Anna, you should be able to get to the PowerPoint now. It was there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty, blessings.
Blessing. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Bye-bye. Bye, Pastor.
Bye. Goodbye to my Finland family, Yako and Yo. Believe it or not, they're my sister-in-law, my in-laws there. So in the Asian culture, we always have to acknowledge the people as older when they're older. So Yo is a little bit older than my wife, Kay, so they're sisters. So that makes Yako my older brother-in-law too. So he doesn't look like it, but he's older than me. See, sometimes nobody wants to. Oh, I'm still recording. I should have stopped it.